Hello, I'm Chet. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, newcomers. I hope that I can be of service with my share. I came into this room somewhere around 2009, and it's been a home group of mine for quite a while. Where I am today, before I backtrack, I'm at a really challenging point in my life, even with some years of recovery and working the steps. I'm walking through this differently than when I first walked into these rooms. The fact that I'm walking through uncomfortable emotions and fears and all that and not running is great. And over the years, I've built up a fellowship in our rooms, and I really have grown to feel that I'm not alone in picking up the phone and talking to fellows and hearing their stories. Seeing fellows walk through similar things or even harder situations, whether it be with alcoholism or just life in general. I have come to find that kind of helpful, but it took time for me. I guess I'll just go back and, why am I able to be in this point of recovery? I think it's because I got a sponsor, and I worked the steps, and I kept coming back, and I took service positions, and I still continue to take service positions. I pick up the phone. Last Tuesday, I went to 4 meetings, 3 Al-Anon meetings. Last Wednesday, I went to 3 meetings in a day. Certainly I made outreach calls, and I actually felt relief in the 8 o'clock Al-Anon meeting, and it was a great lesson for me, so I'm doing pretty damn good, but yeah, it's been challenging. My sponsor died in September, and I would love to spend 10 minutes eulogizing him and saying, what he meant to me and what he did for me. But I guess, if I just keep it program focused, he was of help to me because he came into these rooms. He got a sponsor. He worked the steps. He developed a really strong relationship with a higher power, and then he carried the message for me, like if you look at it in a simple way. And through that, I learned how to love myself. I learned how to accept myself. I came into these rooms not really knowing how to equate alcoholism to my life, because it was after the end of a relationship that was hard to get over, which is a very common thing that I hear in these rooms. I was really hard on myself. I was in a lot of self-pity. That was how I operated, I guess. Victimhood and self-pity, feeling terminally unique. I definitely, in the home growing up, my dad's drinking affected my mom. And so she was in the rooms of Al-Anon when I was a kid, and eventually got back into recovery probably 10 or 15 years ago. So I had one family member in recovery, and they carried that message to me whenever I really needed it. And I'm so grateful for that and for the rooms of Al-Anon. And so I came into these rooms, was here for about 6 months, began dating someone who was a month sober. out of rehab. And shortly into that relationship, a mutual friend of ours looked at me one night and said, "What are you doing?" She just got, he was, in all programs. He said, "What are you doing? She just got sober. You just started Al-Anon. This is going to end horrible." And it did. I really, really played my part in that. And I'll try to keep it succinct. A lot of breaking up, getting back together. I would say a lot of emotional immaturity on my part. And I was like 36, 37. It's ridiculous. And I had been in program. And then I sold my car and went to India for 2 months. Pulling the Geographic, running. And there's a lot more in there, but it ended horribly. And I found my way to Austin, Texas. I had left LA. And I had a sponsor here working my steps, but since I relocated to Austin and not knowing when I'd be back, I got a new sponsor, and that's when I met my sponsor, Paco. And one of the first things he told me to do, or he suggested that I do, was to sit, put my hand on my heart, and just repeat, "I love you." I didn't really get it. I did it, but it would take years before I would really kind of connect to that. And what I came to understand with his suggestions and his guidance through the steps and just in life, I realized he was always connecting me to my higher power through love and compassion for myself. I really feel that saved my life. It's kind of heavy to say that, but yeah. And so it gives me proof that I'm not alone. And he would always say, "You're not alone. You're very much loved." So he's given me a lot of things that I hopefully will carry the rest of my life. And because I certainly felt unwanted, unloved, and alone growing up. And my parents loved me. I had trauma as a kid, but not as bad as some folks in these rooms. But as I got older, I continued to believe that I should be unloved, unwanted, and alone. I was incapable of this or that, or relationships, and I was a pretty responsible adult. So I felt some relief in that. Thank you, 2 minutes. And on the most difficult day of my life, in this room, right over there, right before I got my first sponsor, someone whom I had been talking to for several months, a fellow I admired in this program, I called him a lot, and I can't believe he picked up my phone calls. Man, I was crazy. He would always suggest getting a sponsor, and on this day, it was a really heavy day. It was really tough. I cried all the way to the meeting, driving from Mount Washington here. I can't believe I drove safely. But he said, I suggest you get a sponsor. He wasn't available to sponsor me, but he said, "How is your relationship with your higher power?" And I've never forgotten that. And I guess I can say that by the grace of a higher power, I happened upon a sponsor that guided me towards that relationship. And no matter how much fear I'm in, I always am reminded of how's my relationship with my higher power. I have the steps, particularly 1, 2, and 3. Even when I'm meditating in step 11, I'll kind of meditate on steps 1, 2, and 3. I certainly have the fellows. What I'm also learning is humility. And the longer I'm in program, the more I would like to think I got it, or that I can speak with some reverence or, I don't know, experience, but I'm learning a lot about humility, just to keep it simple. And I know I'm getting close here. I've had a lot of conflict in my family of origin back home in Louisiana between my dad and his wife. I've shared about this a bunch. And to wrap it up, I've dealt with a lot of resentment. And I've been able to work my program around it, set boundaries, stop communication, but come back into communication with my dad and his wife, show up when I don't feel like it. And it required humility, and maybe I'll share more about that in the second half, but I look forward to seeing what y'all have to say. Thank you. What I've realized with what Al-Anon has given me, the tools of the program have given me a specific language to apply to my life. And oftentimes I've found, whether I'm dealing with a situation for myself or reasoning another fellow's situation out, I've found that we arrive at sometimes very simple solutions for very complicated emotions or situations. And a lot of it's in that second to last paragraph when they talk about repeating the slogan that can quell a rising panic, reading Al-Anon literature to provide new perspectives on a difficult situation, calling a sponsor or an Al-Anon friend, working a step, going to an Al-Anon meeting, and all of those tools. The slogans have helped so much, one day at a time, or because I've dealt with resentment a lot with my family, it's just helped me to take things one day at a time, to find the next indicated action, pausing. Last year I went home for the holidays. My grandfather was dying, and I got to be with him and all that. And then I really ran into a wonderful Al-Anon situation. I found some pot in my 15-year-old niece's guitar bag. The guitar I was going to borrow to practice singing for my grandfather's funeral. So it was a shit show in my head. I want to be the cool uncle, but I felt I should be an adult. And she didn't know this happened, so I found it in an honest way. So I made calls. I called people in these rooms, and what do I do? Who do I talk to? 1 minute? Yeah, 1 minute. And what I arrived at was, yes, have a conversation with my 15-year-old niece. And also I needed to tell her mother, my sister. But I would talk to my niece first. And I got some alone time with her. And under the guise that we were going to jam. And I looked at her and I said, hey, look, I just want to let you know I found some pot in your gig bag. So, what's going on? And it was just met with silence, and I could see the shame. And I was able to say, I love you. If there's anything you want to talk about, let me know, but I have to tell your mom. And we sat there for maybe an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And I didn't say anything in the living room, and then eventually I repeated again, just let me, if there's anything, you want to tell me, I love you. And just to offer love and support. And then, she went to her room, and I'll wrap it up. And then my sister came home, and I told my sister, and my sister was like, oh yeah, I already confronted her about that. My sister had already been on top of it. And she doesn't even work Al-Anon. I need Al-Anon. I don't know that my brother and sister do at all. They were certainly in the same household and were affected, but I need it. And so I handled that great, in that way. And the next day at our holiday gathering, I was able to kiss my niece on the forehead and say, I love you, and everything was fine. And I'm grateful for this program, for that. And I will leave it at that. And thank you for letting me share that.